It was a busy Saturday afternoon, and the line at the Taco Bell drive-thru was longer than usual. The sun was beating down, and the sounds of cars idling filled the air. In one of those cars, a father and his young son sat, waiting for their turn to place an order. The father, in his early 30s, looked tired. His clothes were worn, and the car they were in was a little older, its paint chipped in places. But his son, no older than 7 or 8, sat in the passenger seat with a look of excitement on his face, as though the simple act of getting Taco Bell was the highlight of his day. "We're almost there, buddy," the father said, his voice soft, but full of hope. The son's eyes lit up with anticipation. "Are we going to get the tacos I like, Dad?" he asked eagerly. The father gave a small smile, but his eyes were filled with an underlying sadness. "We'll see, kiddo," he said, his voice betraying a hint of worry. As they reached the window to pay, the father reached into his wallet, only to find it nearly empty. His hand hesitated for a moment, and he glanced at his son, whose face was still hopeful. He looked back at the cashier, trying to hide the disappointment he was feeling. "I'm sorry," the father said quietly, his voice almost apologetic. "Can we just get one taco for him? I don't have enough for more." The cashier, a young woman, looked at him with sympathy but nodded, ringing up the order for the single taco. The father handed over the small amount of cash he had, trying not to let his son see the sting of defeat in his eyes. As he pulled away, the little boy's smile faltered for just a moment, but then he looked at his dad as if trying to reassure him. "It's okay, Dad. One taco is fine. I'm happy just to be with you." The father smiled, but the weight of his son's words made his heart ache. He knew that his son didn't fully understand, but he would never forget that moment, the moment he couldn't provide for his son in the way he wanted to. As they pulled into a nearby parking spot, the father handed the taco to his son, trying to mask the sorrow he felt inside. The boy opened the wrapper, his face lighting up as he took a bite, savoring the taste. "Thanks, Dad," he said, his voice full of innocence and gratitude. "This is the best taco ever." But the father couldn't shake the feeling that he wasn't doing enough. He had promised his son that he would always provide for him, but today he had fallen short. He glanced down at the empty wallet in his pocket, the weight of his financial struggles pressing down on him. Just as he was about to start the car, again a voice interrupted his thoughts. "Hey, is everything all right?" The voice was calm, steady, and familiar. Clint Eastwood, the actor, a regular at the same Taco Bell, had been sitting in his own car across the lot overhearing the exchange. Clint had been watching quietly from his seat, his eyes sharp, but his heart was moved by the father's apparent struggle. The father, surprised but grateful, looked up. "Oh, it's fine. Just a little tight this week," he said, trying to brush off the discomfort. Clint didn't say anything at first. He simply walked over, his presence commanding yet gentle. He glanced at the boy, still happily eating his taco, and then back at the father. "I know what it's like," Clint said softly. "To want more for your kids, to feel like you're not doing enough. But that boy right there, he doesn't need more. He needs you, and you're giving him that. That's what counts." The father was taken aback by the words. He hadn't expected a stranger, especially Clint Eastwood, to offer such comfort. He felt a lump rise in his throat, a mix of gratitude and shame, and he couldn't speak for a moment. Clint gave him a small, understanding smile. "You're doing your best. That's all you can do." Then, before the father could protest, Clint reached into his wallet and handed him a stack of bills. "Take this," Clint said simply. "For the next time." The father, overwhelmed, tried to refuse. I can't accept this. I'm just trying to make it work." Clint placed the money in his hand, his grip firm. "You'll use it when you need it. No pride in being too proud to accept help when it's offered." With that, Clint nodded and walked back to his car, leaving the father stunned by the kindness of a stranger. As Clint drove off, the father sat there for a moment, staring at the bills in his hand. He couldn't believe what had just happened. It wasn't just the money, it was the gesture, the kindness from someone who had no reason to help, yet chose to do so anyway. He looked over at his son, who was still happily finishing the taco. The boy didn't know what had just transpired, but for the father it was a moment that would stay with him forever. He had been so consumed by his own struggles that he had failed to realize the simplest truth, that his son was content, not because of the things he could buy, but because of the love he gave him. The weight of the moment hit him all at once. He didn't need to have it all figured out. He just needed to be present, to give what he could, and to show his son that despite the challenges they faced, they would always have each other. The father turned the car back on and looked over at his son, who was now smiling up at him with a look of pure joy. "What do you say, buddy? Ready to go home?" The boy nodded enthusiastically, not aware of the quiet transformation that had just taken place in his father's heart. They drove home, the father's mind clearer than it had been in weeks. When they arrived, he turned to his son with a smile. "You know," he said, "I think we'll make do just fine. And I'll make sure you always have something to smile about." The boy's eyes lit up. "Can we have tacos again tomorrow, Dad?" he asked innocently. The father chuckled, his heart swelling with love. "We'll have tacos whenever you want, buddy. Just you and me." That evening, as they sat together on the couch, the father realized that the true wealth he had wasn't in the money or the things he could give his son. It was in the moments like this, the love, the bond, the shared joy, and the understanding that they were enough, no matter what the world threw at them. The days that followed brought a sense of peace to the father and son. Although the financial struggles were still there, something had shifted inside the father. The weight of providing for his son was no longer about material things. It was about being present, showing up, and making sure that his son always felt valued, loved, and important no matter what. The small acts of kindness from Clint Eastwood had reminded him of this, and it was a lesson he would carry with him every day. On the following Saturday, as they sat in the park enjoying another simple afternoon, the father looked over at his son, who was playing with a small toy car, his face lit with pure joy. The father smiled, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude. He had so much to be thankful for: his son's laughter, their time together, and the unexpected kindness that had reminded him what truly mattered. His phone buzzed in his pocket, and he pulled it out to find a text message from an unknown number. He opened it, his heart skipping a beat when he read the message. "I hope you and your son are doing well. Take care of each other." The message was signed by Clint. The father smiled softly, his eyes welling up. Clint hadn't just changed his day, he had changed the way he saw everything. As he looked at his son, he realized that love, in its simplest form, was the greatest gift he could ever give. It wasn't in the amount of money he could spend or the things he could provide. It was in the moments, the conversations, the time spent together. And from that day forward, the father knew he had everything he needed to give his son the best life possible, not through things, but through love. As time passed, the father's life slowly began to improve, not because of sudden wealth or luck, but because of the shift in his perspective. He had always thought that providing for his son meant being able to give him everything he wanted, to have a comfortable life with no worries. But the truth was, his son was already happy with the simplest things: the smiles, the moments together, and the love that surrounded them. Those were the things that truly mattered. A few months later, the father and his son were walking down the street when they noticed a small food drive taking place in the park. The father's heart felt a tug as he thought back to the moment when Clint had helped him, when he had learned the true value of kindness and love. He looked at his son, who was eagerly looking at the table full of food and donations. "What do you think, buddy?" he asked. His son's eyes lit up. "Let's help them, Dad. Maybe we can make someone's day better like the man did for us." The father smiled, feeling a deep sense of pride. "Let's do it," he said, taking his son's hand. The two of them approached the table, and with the little money they had saved from a week's worth of hard work, they made a donation. As they walked away from the food drive, the father looked down at his son and saw the same spark in his eyes that he had seen in Clint's. The spark of kindness, of knowing that sometimes even the smallest act can make the biggest difference. "You're a good kid," the father said, ruffling his son's hair. You remind me every day how important it is to be kind to others. His son grinned up at him, happy with the impact they had just made. I learned from the best, Dad. And in that moment, the father knew that Clint Eastwood's quiet lesson had reached further than he had ever imagined. It wasn't just about receiving kindness. It was about paying it forward, sharing the love, and making sure that, no matter where life took them, they would always be there for others, just as Clint had been there for him. Please subscribe channel for Clint Eastwood Respect Thanks.